name is Janie Millwood, and I'm one of the student docents here at the Special Collections Library. Today, I'm here at the Strategies for Suffrage exhibit in the Hargrett Gallery, and I'll be talking about the suffragette picketing strategies and how they affected the broader suffrage movement. Looking at this picture, you wouldn't think that these women were violent criminals who had served hard time in prison. They definitely don't look like terrorists. Yet, because of the bold and unorthodox strategies these women used, the American public saw them as criminals because of their suffrage protests during the U.S.'s involvement in World War I. But why would simple protests make these women criminals? Well, by 1917, the women's suffrage movement had hosted several parades, marches, and demonstrations in an attempt to gain President Wilson's support for legislation guaranteeing women the right to vote. However, these public demonstrations had made little progress for the movement, and leaders of the National Woman's Party felt these tactics were growing stale and ineffective. In an effort to grab the nation's attention, the National Woman's Party adopted the extreme picketing strategy of publicly demonstrating at the White House gates in January of 1917. But how exactly did these strategies make the suffragettes common criminals? While we might not think so today, these actions were revolutionary for their time, as no group had ever picketed the White House before this. These women publicly used Wilson's words against him, something nobody, especially not a group of women, had ever done before. For months, these silent sentinels marched in a line from the National Woman's Party headquarters to the White House. As they marched, suffragettes carried banners, emblazoned with thought-provoking messages, which they used to embarrass and pressure President Wilson into action. Suffragettes frequently used Wilson's own words against him to protest what they saw as Wilson's hypocrisy. The president was willing to fight a war in Europe for democracy, but ignored the democratic crisis at home. By the publicity of their new strategy, the National Woman's Party hosted the Grand Picket on March 4, 1917, where more than 1,000 women marched around the White House for hours, enduring icy, driving rain for the hope of presenting President Wilson with resolutions. Sadly, these efforts were in vain, as Wilson ignored the demonstration and drove through the line without acknowledging the picketers. Public opinion drastically changed towards the suffrage movement when the U.S. entered World War I in April of 1917. Because national unity was an essential part of the American war machine, suffragettes were frequently accused of undermining the American war effort because their wartime protests were seen as public acts of disloyalty. By hosting these parades and using the silent sentinels, the suffragettes made many political enemies when they compared President Wilson to figures such as German leader Kaiser Wilhelm and insinuated he was lying to American allies. In response to the picketing starting in June of 1917, the suffragettes were frequently arrested and were forced to endure harsh prison sentences, such as terms in the Occoquan workhouse in Virginia. After release from prison, suffragettes used their experience in the workhouse to outrage others while galvanizing public opinion in their favor. Perhaps because of the guilt he felt at the conditions the suffragettes experienced, or perhaps because of political motivations, Woodrow Wilson finally declared his support for women's suffrage in 1918. Wilson's support allowed a federal amendment for women's suffrage to pass in the House of Representatives, even though it would be another 2 years before the amendment was eventually ratified in 1920. Gaining the right to vote was not an easy struggle, and picketing formed a small but important part of the broader fight for women's suffrage. While we might not have defined their actions as criminal, using these inflammatory banners and the radical picketing strategies frequently put the suffragettes at odds with the public. Yet, for all its intensity, these strategies formed a key part in convincing not only President Wilson, but the American public that a women's suffrage amendment was necessary. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you can drop by the Special Collections Library soon and check out these exhibits for yourselves.